So let's hope that peace will be found. Someday there will be peace, and there'll be durable peace, and it'll be, of course, great if India can play a role in that. But let me now step aside to all of this history and look a little bit at the future. Because Israel is not only something about the history and about the conflict, it's also about something really dramatic that is happening out here. And that's a high-tech revolution, the likes of which very few countries have actually seen. And it's really interesting that it's happening here in Israel, because it's a country of 9 million people. Now, what's leading to it? You could argue it's because it's a country of 9 million people, lots of immigrants coming in, surrounded by enemies. So you need army, you need conscription. Every young person in Israel goes to the army. They sometimes end up in elite units like the 8200 unit, where they're trained in cyber security, and they're trained in computer arts, and then they leave the army and they take that to the private sector. Whatever the reasons are, a culture of chutzpah, a culture of pushing back, but all of that has led to a startup revolution here in Israel. And it was a great pleasure of mine to meet in Tel Aviv this morning one of the people who's been looking at that really, really closely, and also somebody who's been writing and talking at great length about how startup nation can become scale-up nation. Here's my conversation with Hillel. Interestingly, there's one thing that's really defined Israel over the past few years. It's not just been about the conflict or the conflicts that are continuing right now. It's also been this. This is the startup hub of the world. Israel is where a lot of the high tech is done. And this, by the way, the headquarters, this is the Biga Cafe in Sarona. You have Stanford University at the heart of Silicon Valley in the United States. Here, it's cafes like this. It's a place like this where all the people come together and they gather and they talk and they incubate some of the most fantastic technology that the world has seen. And here's one of the people who is actually helping to scale up startup nation to scale up nation. I think that's the way Forbes described it.
It is indeed.
It's such a pleasure talking to you.
The honor is mine. I've heard unbelievable things. I've followed you. I've seen your work. It's an honor.
You're being too kind. Hey, tell me about this place, though. I mean, let's sort of look at it.
Yeah,
I heard you were telling me on the phone that this is the Stanford University of Israel.
Yeah,
Tell me what's so special about this place.
This is Biga Cafe. We're in Sarona Marketplace. The Sarona, I don't even know what to call this place. I mean, you'll see it when we walk around. It's an unbelievably beautiful place. And literally every tech company is right here. So this is just amazing location. So I sit here every day. And if you come here on a regular day, you basically see half the ecosystem just like flowing through here, from VCs to CEOs to journalists. They're all here. It's just an amazing place to sit. I mean, I love it. And it's just a very, very convenient place.
Okay, so let's now talk about, and I'm going to pick your brains on this, right? What makes Israel one of the centers of the tech world? And it's an interesting question because it's a tiny little country. You've got 9 million people. I'm sorry, coming from India, there are 1.4 billion people. Right. And Israel, 9 million people in a landmass which is smaller than Meghalaya, I think is the way I've often heard it described. And look at the technology that Israel has come up with. The camera, Face ID, Israeli, right? Mobileye, Israeli. Yep. USB, Israeli. What does it?
Listen, I mean, there's obviously a lot of literature on this. The book Startup Nation answered that question, and there's not one right answer. There's many, many factors here. The military definitely plays a very significant role. 8200 and the intelligence units are the most innovative military units, I think, in the world. And by the way, right behind us is the HQ, the headquarters of the IDF, where it all goes down, right there.
I'm just going to pause you as you go along, because each of the factors he's going to talk about, I'm going to just analyze it. You said 8200 unit.
Yeah.
I was talking about Stanford and other places in Silicon Valley. 8200 is an Israeli army elite unit. Now, kids get picked up from that. They start identifying kids at the age of 15 and 16.
Yeah.
And then they enter this unit. And all the really good people or the brightest technology people all come from an army unit. So that's the incubator of Israeli tech.
That's a really good way to put it. I mean, I can tell you it's extremely rare that I see a leading entrepreneur when we start the meeting that it doesn't start with, I came from 8200. It's everyone came from 8200. It's wild. But, that's just one component. There's definitely a cultural component, right? I think that, I'll generalize, but then again, life is about generalizations, and say that if you say to most entrepreneurs in the world that what they want to build is impossible, they're like, okay, I'll move on to the next thing. You tell an Israeli that what they want to do is impossible, you know what they say? Hold my beer. Let me do it, right? And then they go and they build it. So there's a cultural thing for sure. There's definitely...
There's a historical element to that, because at the end of the day, what's happened in this country for the last, 70 years?
75, yeah.
it was a desert where these buildings come from. It was a desert, right?
Yeah.
And how do you green it? How do you feed people in a place like this? I'm going to come to the enemies in just a couple of seconds.
Yeah, it's remarkable. Mark Twain famously came here and said it's a desert, and there's nothing here. But so we mentioned the army, mentioned the culture. There's the government itself that promotes and encourages entrepreneurship. There's the innovation authority that gives out grants to deep tech technology companies. No equity. There's that element. There's no question that the Israeli chutzpah, which is part of the culture element for sure. There's definitely a historical element here. I think that not to get too heavy.
Should we walk this way? Tell me the most interesting places to go here. Now let's come to some of the downsides. Okay, we know all the good stuff that has happened. When you look at things like the politics of it right now, the judicial reforms coming, there's a talk about Israel moving towards the right. We're not going to have that much diversity. Democracy is in danger. Those are the sort of things that then stop fostering innovation in the same manner. At least that's what the risk is. That's what the...
I said to you, my opinion on this stuff is extremely unpopular. But I think there are challenges. Let me just give that disclaimer. There are challenges. The judicial reform, the conflict, it's challenging. Having said that, the Jewish people have been through rougher times, and neither the judicial reform nor the conflict will be the end of Israeli tech, nor will it be the end of democracy. We're not going anywhere. Again, I'm not saying there aren't people who are pulling their money. There are. That's a fact. But
New York Times said that there are a large number of people saying that if this is the path on which Israel is going, then we don't necessarily want to have our money out here. And one of the risks is any society and any the hubs that are being built out here, which are being built on very talented individuals, that talent is fungible. They can go to New York and set up their companies.
Listen, I'm very, very involved, formally and informally, in everything that's going on in this country. My brother is an administrative assistant for one of the leading, MKs in this country. So, I do see what's going on, both from the inside and from the tech world. I see both sides. And again, it's challenging, but at the end of the day, a tech investor wants to invest in creativity, wants to invest in innovation, wants to invest in potential, in dreams. And those dreams are not going anywhere. Okay, so, it's true that right now people are scared, but I can tell you right now, we can have this conversation in 1 year from now, and you'll see that not only did this not affect Israeli tech is stronger than it's ever been. I have no doubt about that, because the innovation's increasing, the creativity's increasing, the success stories are increasing. We have, a company that's raising yesterday $300 million that is the leading cybersecurity company in the world. So we're seeing more and more of this. I'm not really worried, if I'm being honest with you.
So I was told that if you come to Bega Cafe, you get everybody in the tech world globally, get them to talk to them right out here. You're one of the people who was actually involved with the IPO of Facebook itself, right? Weren't you?
I was, a very long time ago, yeah.
So tell me about the scene. Tell me about what makes places like this the incubation of so much technology, and what makes Israel the tech hub that it is.
Absolutely. So the whole country of Israel is an amazing place filled with, frankly, leaders. The culture here is to be a leader. From a young age, people go to the army. They're taught to be leaders, and I think that encourages an entrepreneurial culture. Historically, the tech hubs in Israel were in a few places, but I think over the last 10 years, it's very much concentrated in Tel Aviv, and even in a shorter period than that, in Sarona, in this specific area. And I think part of it's the convenience to the train and to the highway, and it's a beautiful place. They're adding construction, it's got a cool vibe, obviously, and so this particular place attracts a lot of people.
So you said that there's a culture of leadership, right? And that happens because you're going to the army. If you're going to the army, you've got to take decisions. If you're a 19-year-old, you're manning an Iron Dome unit, and you've got to take a decision, do I shoot that missile down or not? That makes going and setting up a company not that challenging after that.
It's still challenging, but I think it's good preparation. I think even more so than the decisions is probably just the focus on working with people. I think that university education, it doesn't generally force you to work as a team and to be a leader. I had I think a little bit more of a unique experience. My program was much more collaborative, and we were constantly working in teams, which I think helps foster that. But it's the interpersonal side that I actually think that makes the bigger difference. Technology obviously is the underpinning, but being able to work on technology in the context of other people, I think, is the major driver.